you've realized very quickly, which is in the absence of marketing, you have no customers. When you build a marketing engine for your business, you take advantage of the cheapest acquisition channel in the history of marketing and advertising, which is social media and content. I mean, like, there is no cheaper way to acquire customers than by building a substantial brand through these channels. That's marketing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's episode of Glennda's Guru. Today, I am excited to have some time with my friend and business mentor, Jimmy Mackin. Jimmy, you know, it's funny. We had not met until, what was it? Inman, maybe?
We were in New York City. Yeah, Inman for New York City. I came up to see you. Yeah.
You came up to see me. We had an amazing dinner together at a bar. Do you remember at the bar where they wouldn't serve me water in the wine glass?
They would not. No, they clearly did not follow you on social media, because they otherwise would have been sprinting to get a wine glass.
It was hilarious. I was like, what the heck? But I have to say, and I don't know, I'm sure I've told you this personally, but you literally have had so much influence on me from a business kind of creation standpoint. I had the opportunity to kind of talk with you a lot when I was putting together Greatness with Glennda and a lot of my mastermind classes. So I think that you are probably one of maybe 3 to 5 people that have the best business design mind I've ever come across.
Yeah, well, it's high praise, Glennda. I think anybody who's in this space, who is a business owner like you and I are, I think there is a certain level of, we're always trying to learn. We're always trying to figure out better ways to do things. We're always trying to figure out who's done what we've done before and how can we get there faster. You know, I remember listening to a podcast with Brian Chesky, and Brian Chesky, founder of Airbnb, arguably one of probably the better CEOs who's running a publicly traded company right now, who's a founder still. He was talking about this idea of anytime that you're trying to learn something new, and if you're growing a business or taking on an ambitious project, you're going to always be learning. He's like, the very first step is not to start Googling on the internet ideas and strategies and insight. He's like, no. He says the very first thing to do is find out who is the smartest person you can find in this space, in this category, in this topic. Spend the first phase, if you will, obsessed over finding the best in that space. And then from there, listen, learn, read, whatever you can that they're producing, because you're going to compress time. You're going to be able to get the information you're looking for. And so that is something I know you and I both have a passion for. I think that represents the types of founders that we look at, people who are looking to step on the gas, that sort of nice mix of ambition, confidence, curiosity, humility. I mean, you got to have it all in this space if you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. And you make a great point. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to go faster. You really don't. People, sometimes you just need to move those tires from a Pinto to a Ferrari to make it work. So I love that. I love that. So Jimmy, obviously I came across you. I got to know you as the CEO of Curaytor. And, you know, I will tell you, I did not have the opportunity to go to Summit this summer. First Tom Ferry Summit I have missed in 10 years. And my travel schedule was just all whacked out. So I didn't get a chance to go. But you were what everybody was talking about. You were literally on what does Morgan Wallen say? Like I'm on everybody's lips. Everybody was talking about you and what you brought to the conference and what you brought to the stage. So tell me kind of, what are you doing now? Where are you going? Where are you finding your passion these days?
Sure. Well, that's very kind. They could be talking either about my presentation or my pants, which were slightly too tight for the event. Apparently, I got a lot of feedback about that. It's funny. I've made this interesting. If I look back my career, I've been in real estate now for about 15 years, and like everybody in real estate, I kind of fell into this space. It was more of a roundabout way. Started some small software companies early on, very moderate success, and then kind of got into the consulting space. Started working with a local Remax agency, and then from there, the rest is sort of history. Where I'm at right now in my career, next year I'm turning 40, so I'm 39. Just celebrated my 39th birthday, and I've made this decision, Glennda, to go from being a business owner to an owner of businesses. And it's a really interesting, and you and I were talking about this off air, is a really interesting transition, because I think the very first company you start that is successful, you develop this emotional connection to it. It is your baby. In many cases, it's tied to your identity. So if it's doing well, you feel great. If it's not doing well, you're probably not a great person to be around. And it becomes all consuming in every single sense of the word. And so I've reached a level of commercial success in my career where, as I stepped away from my baby, if you will, the company that I co-founded with some great people, and I stepped down as CEO, I've had this sort of opportunity to have some new perspective. And I'm looking to have a bigger impact for more people. I'm looking to build a business, which I'll talk more about if we have a chance to dive into it, a business that's kind of unlike any other business, which is a business that builds businesses. And I realized something about myself in this transition, that there's a particular part of the business process that I thrive in, that I really enjoy, that I feel like I'm most fulfilled. And that is, as Peter Thiel would call it, the 0 to 1 phase, which is getting something up and running from nothing. No, there's no business, there's no infrastructure, there's no employees, and taking it to something. Going from $6 million a year in revenue to $7 million a year revenue, and having incremental gain and incremental improvements and incremental, new hire, like that stuff not exciting to me at this stage. I like that, let's create some magic, let's take some risk. And unfortunately, when you run a larger company, that mentality can sometimes be the exact opposite of what that business needs. Sometimes the business needs just good old fashioned incrementalism. I can't think of anything less exciting than that. We only got like one lap around this thing. Like, I'm not looking to be spending my time doing OKR planning every quarter. I mean, that's not what I want to do. And so right. I think I really recognize that, and have begun to embrace it and kind of begin to build my life around this idea.
Well, where I think your lane of genius is marketing. I mean, you are a marketing genius, a marketing master. That really, in everything that I see in what you do, no matter what business it is, the marketing part of it really seems to be different. It seems to stand out. It seems to get some traction. It seems to get some momentum. Like, you really know how to, really turn the wheel when it comes to traction and momentum, when it comes to marketing. Why is that? Do you have a background in marketing?
I have my background is in software and product development. And, but when you build any type of products, you've realized very quickly, which is in the absence of marketing, you have no customers. And probably it became self-apparent, right? Like that, oh yeah, we build this great product, and okay, great, it's awesome. And then, well, what do we do next? We had to go find some customers. So my journey in marketing has been built out of necessity. I think about one of the late great, probably I would say the patron saint of management is a guy by the name of Peter Drucker. Many of your people in your audience probably read a Peter Drucker book, or at least they've heard principles of Peter Drucker. He said there are only two functions in a business: marketing and innovation. And that is essentially creating something of value and then communicating that value. Now, people who are listening go, well, Jimmy, what about HR? What about sales? What about customer service? Sure. Yes, those are necessities that need to exist. But in terms of the driving engine behind an organization, it's marketing and innovation. It's how are you improving the value you deliver to customers, and then how are you communicating that to the external world? And so I've had a passion for marketing because I like what marketing does, Glennda, which is marketing makes the cash register ring. And marketing gives you leverage, and marketing gets people to pay attention to you. And I think this is actually, for our audience who's going to be primarily real estate agents who's listening to this, the thing that's really interesting is that when you build a marketing engine for your business, and I'll give you an analogy here in a second, but when you build a marketing engine for your business, like you have with your business, and like people like Ken Pozak have had with their business, what happens is you take advantage of the cheapest acquisition channel in the history of marketing and advertising, which is social media and content. I mean, like, there is no cheaper way to acquire customers than by building a substantial brand through these channels. That's marketing. Now, the benefit is you also have a great monetization model, which is when you sell real estate, you get paid a lot of money. When you build and develop JVs with mortgage and title, you can extend that relationship and generate more money. You can even hire people on your team that then also help you generate more money. And so there's this magic that happens when you build this, call it media empire, which is the cheapest customer acquisition model. But unlike media, which has a terrible business model, you apply a really good business model, which is a real estate business, real estate team, real estate brokerage. You bring those two worlds together and you've got magic. And I think this is what people, you and others who have done this so well, Glennda, as a marketer, I look at what you guys have built and I say to myself in just admiration, I'm like, why doesn't everyone else see what is so obvious that this is the only thing they should be thinking about? And instead, what you find is agents kind of create a series of excuses or reasons why they can't do what you do. I'm not as charismatic as Glennda, right? I'm not as creative as Ken. Like, as if these are real excuses why you shouldn't do this. I mean, what an incredible opportunity that we have in real estate to take the cheapest customer acquisition model in the history of marketing and advertising and append it to a great business model. I mean, like, there are other industries or other businesses that are killed to have that opportunity, and we have it in real estate. And yet, Glennda, firsthand, 0.5% of agents and teams are really embracing this.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. They are. It's interesting to me how there is this huge gap between agents that are actually doing loads of business and agents that are doing none. I mean, used to, like, a blind squirrel could catch a nut every now and then. And so
Sure.
Everybody was doing a little bit of business, right? But today there's this divide between agents doing a truckload and agents doing zero.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of data that supports this in terms of the number of agents right now who are doing, let's say, north of 30 transactions a year versus everybody else. Now, listen, let's put aside the people who are in the coastal communities who are selling, multi-million-dollar properties. Let's talk to sort of the middle America folks. And I mean, you can't really be in business if you are not doing 20 plus transactions a year. At the average price point. Like, you can make a living, but you're probably not going to make a great living. So there's this idea that, putting aside the higher price points for a moment, there's just this very clear divide between the agents, the haves and have-nots, the winners and the losers, the ones who are successful and the ones who are struggling. This is why I was looking at some data recently from Open Door in their investor deck, talked about this idea. I think, if I remember correctly, and we could fact check this after the pod, but I think 1 in 4 real estate agents had a second job. Okay. Now,
I believe it.
Now, let's be clear. I think probably their first job was another job, and the real estate was their second job. It's supposed to real estate being the primary and the other one. But there's just this the reality of there is no, I can't think of any other job. This is my big gripe against people who are, call it, believe that real estate agents are overpaid and are lazy and are stupid and, should not exist. This is my big counter argument to them. Well, first and foremost, the consumer has forever had options to list a house themselves, to go discount broker right. I mean, let me give you some stats on this. The number of consumers who are listing by themselves, despite having the advancements of technology and AI and having their buddy's best friend uncle who got their real estate license, that number is at an all-time low, meaning that consumers are choosing to hire a professional real estate agent 91% of the time. That's up 10% from 15 years ago at this point. And so when people say real estate agents are overpaid and are not of value, then why the hell are 91% of consumers hiring them? Either we're overpaid or people are stupid. Can't have both at this stage. And I believe that when consumers actually weigh their options, they realize, oh no, this actually does make good financial sense to get professional advice. Now the problem is, and firsthand, nobody dislikes bad realtors more than good realtors. The problem is, right? Consumers have to deal with them. Consumers have to deal with them for a little bit of time. You guys have to deal with these idiots all the time. And so I think the challenge that agents have right now, good agents, I mean, there only good agents are listening to this podcast. The challenge good agents have right now, Glennda, is how do you differentiate yourself from the average?
Yeah. How do you show that you are? I always say the best real estate agents are highly undervalued and the worst real estate agents are highly overpaid. How do you differentiate yourself from the person that is terrible, that is highly overpaid? And I think that you hit the nail on the head, is that, right now we are in this kind of divide, and it's just really helping the consumer understand who they're dealing with. Which bucket did you get into? And you said something, and I want to go back and I want to visit it. So you're telling me that only 9% of homes that sell are sold without the assistance of a real estate agent. Is that the number that you said?
That is correct. So 91% of homes being sold right now have a real estate agent tied to it. 9% of consumers are choosing to list by themselves, basically going the FSBO route. And so, which is, again, it's at an all-time, FSBO is at an all-time low. And you look at, I remember, I've been in this industry long enough to remember 4 years ago, when the boogeyman that was at the door was iBuying. And everyone was saying, I listened to these really smart investors go on CNBC talking about how Opendoor was going to be the next $250 billion market cap company because they were going to revolutionize an old, tired, complex, convoluted system. And they were going to allow you to buy a house with a button and sell a house with a button. And today, I didn't look at the stocks today, but I don't think Opendoor's market cap's $250 billion. And last time I checked, I think they're buying fewer houses now than they were, even 12 months ago. And this is not to knock iBuying. It's just to sort of reflect that this market, people, I think, don't understand that the consumer has always had choices. And I mean, if you've owned a house for 13 and a half years, which is typically the average time someone has a house before they sell it, you're not necessarily looking to sell in a day. I mean, it's. I think I saw Zillow put out data on this. The average consumer takes 7 months from their first action to their first decision when it comes to selling their house. So you kind of want to sit down and talk to somebody who's done it before, who's got some advice, who's got some insight, who can add some value so you can avoid making mistakes. So I think everyone's been focused in, on the the disruptors of real estate, Glennda. They've been focusing on speed, right, and convenience. And I think what the consumer's actually looking for is confidence and certainty. And so they're not looking for the speed and convenience. Sure, those are factors, but the real thing I'm looking for is confidence and certainty. I want confidence that I'm making the right decision, because maybe selling is not the right decision. and having an agent. I'm sure, Glennda, you've been across the kitchen table with a lot of sellers. And I'm sure in many instances you said, listen, I know that you're thinking about selling, but my professional advice is you should probably wait. You should probably hold. The grass isn't greener. I mean, like, you think a bot is going to tell a consumer that, Glennda? Like, ain't happening.
Well, and you talk about disruptors. I mean, you look at Zillow, who has spent literally zillions of dollars to gain market share. And I think they're like at 4% market share, like after all of the zillions of dollars and all of the super app and the convenience. And and maybe I'm wrong, because I'm a dinosaur anyway, but convenience and quickness to me is what I look for in anything that can be changed, returned, or refunded. I am all about convenience and quick when it comes, if I can return it, if I can get a refund, or if I can change it all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. Last time I checked, when I went and got my teeth done, I cannot get a refund on that. When you sell your house, you can't get a refund if you used a crappy real estate agent. It's just that simple. And so for me, I think that when you're looking for convenient and quick, you should stick to things that are returnable and refundable.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I was on a panel recently, not recently, but a little while back, with a guy from Open Door, and he talked about this idea that he wants to make buying and selling a house as seamless as buying a tomato at a grocery store. And I said I had to remind him that you don't have an emotional attachment to a tomato. And if you do, you should see a therapist. The comparison is I get it makes a lot of sense when you're trying to raise a bunch of capital. And to your point, listen, I'd like to sell one of the businesses I've got coming up here to Zillow. So I'll choose my words wisely. But if they go back and look at my history, they probably ain't gonna buy any of the companies I start. I think that the thing about Zillow is a great example of a business that can capture the attention but not the revenue. I mean, they have outsized attention. I think last time I checked, 80 some odd % of the people who come to their website are coming organically. They're getting, somewhere in the ballpark of $50 or $100 million $100 million visitors a month, somewhere in that range. And they become, there's a fancy word that people with degrees that we don't have, Glennda, use to describe when something becomes a word to describe everything. So like instead of saying tissues, we say Kleenex. Zillow has become that word. The word Zillow is searched more than the word real estate. And so to your point, they don't have much market share relative to the size and scope of their brand. And I think what you're tapping into is this basic idea that people want to work with people. And I think that is, I mean, like at a certain point, can we just end? Now, listen, I think the consumer wanted to work with a great agent and agents wanted to be better for the consumers is what we should all aspire to. But we think in this industry, unfortunately, and we'll talk about marketing here in a second, we don't do ourselves any favors as real estate agents by the way in which we communicate to the consumer. And I think we can talk about that, Glennda, a little bit, but like that's probably the reason why consumers feel the way they feel is because the way in which we communicate to them. And if we change that, all of a sudden we change the entire conversation with these consumers.
Yeah, I mean, nail on head right there. We have done more to diminish our value than Zillow would have ever been able to do, because we are so prepared to slap on our social media, just listed, just sold in 4 days or 4 hours, 400,000 over the list price with 40 offers. We are so quick to do that. And every time that you fail to tell the story of real estate, you diminish your value just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And what kills me is we have the opportunity to tell amazing stories of how people got from listed to sold, from looking to moving in, We have such great stories. And, I was with somebody this morning and they said, reality television hasn't done us any favors because you show one house, it's $50 million in the Hollywood Hills. You make $2 million selling it. And the next thing you're drinking a martini in your stilettos and praise the Lord and pass the money. So tell me, Jimmy, what advice do you have for the everyday real estate agent, the real estate agent that is working in their business every day, pounding the pavement, pounding the funds? What are you telling those agents to do to be successful?
Yeah, well, let's look at that question through two different lenses. The first is from a business perspective, and the second will be from a marketing perspective.
Okay.
So from a business perspective, Glennda, I have always believed in this idea of prioritizing revenue. Tom and I talk about this a lot, this idea of like lead with revenue. And that means the first thing that you do in the morning isn't checking your email inbox, which is somebody else's to-do list. The first thing you do in the morning is figuring out what are the levers I'm going to pull to generate revenue for my business. Now, you and I both know there are a couple different levers that they can fall into. You can do things that are, call it relatively labor intensive, where you're trading time for money, or you're making an investment in the future of business so you have economies of scale. So as an example, me shooting a video for my social media profile and posting it online may or may not necessarily drive business today, but I'm making an investment in the future to drive down my customer acquisition cost. And so there are you can have this kind of combination of what I would call a checkings account approach and a savings account approach, or an investment portfolio approach. The checking account approach is like texting people in your SOI, making circle dialing around a listing, right? Checking back in with the people in your CRM you haven't followed up with a long time, DMing a couple folks on, that have maybe interacted with your stories on Instagram, like really boots on the ground, kind of last mile type of sales. And then the savings account approach is more on that kind of media and content approach we've been talking about, which is shooting the videos, creating things of value, things of that nature. So like, let's just kind of put that in those two categories. From a business perspective, I'm going to sound like Mike Ferry here, but like I am just starting every day off focusing on getting some revenue into the business. And I love that. Like that we should never lose that. No matter what stage of the business we're in, we should always be focusing on like that main priority, and not letting the seemingly important things that really don't matter fill up our calendars. And that is probably the great sin we have in real estate, is that like you're not doing the work when you're planning to do the work, preparing to do the work, right? Thinking about the work, talking to your friends about doing the work. Like you're doing the work when you're doing the work. And I think we kind of forget that. And so I'll give you an example of this, Glennda. In real estate, last year or this year, I had a chance to go to about 35 different cities across America, speak to probably somewhere around the ballpark of 40 to 50,000 agents face to face. And one thing I learned is really successful agents, they break the vicious cycle. And the vicious cycle affects everybody in real estate. And the way it goes is this: if you've got nobody in your pipeline, you got no prospects, you got no appointments coming up, you tend to, after you've panicked, you tend to shift towards things that help fill your pipeline. You start marketing, you start selling, and all of a sudden, sure enough, your pipeline fills up. Right? Magically. And then once your pipeline is full, Glennda, what is the first thing that most agents stop doing?
They take their foot off the gas.
That's exactly right. They like the thing that they did to fill their pipeline, they stop doing. Because they focus on the business that's literally right in front of them, and they kind of get in this like, things are going great, oh no, they're not moment. And it's this vicious cycle that happens in real estate where you go from rags to riches and back to rags. I mean, like this cycle is any other real business in the world doesn't wake up and says, in next month we're going to start getting some customers. No, like every business operates in this world where they're always acquiring customers and always servicing customers. And so as a real estate agent, you have got to structure your day that no matter how busy you are always focusing on getting your next customer. That's the business it's not a nice to have. It's the business that we're in. And I think that's an important distinction. Now, I can give you 100 different specific tactical marketing ideas, but I think we got to, Glennda, to start, we got to fix that problem. We got to break that vicious cycle. And we do that by prioritizing revenue as part of our daily operating procedures.
I love that. I had this lady who looked at one of my listings. She had her own broker, and she was, let's call it, I don't want to say celebrity influencer, but she sold a product on social. She invented a product and sold it on social. And so as she's looking through this house, I keep hearing this cha-ching, like this little notification on her phone, like a cash register. And finally I turned around and I said to her, I said, somebody's trying to get in touch with you, because it just kept going off and off and off. She goes, oh, no. She goes, that's every time somebody buys something on my Shopify, it dings like that, like a cash register. I'm like, seriously? She's like, yeah. She's like, it reminds me, like, I need to be doing whatever it takes to make the cash register ring. And so what I decided to do was like every time my phone rings with a prospect, I have it set like the cash register ring. Every time that I get a lead through my my website, I have that ding set up like a cash register, because that's when I'm making money. That's my opportunity to make money. And I think that when the phone rings, the first thing, we don't want to answer it. I don't want to talk to them. And I'm thinking to myself, you literally make money talking to people. Why don't you want to talk to anybody?
Yeah. It's but first off, that's an amazing story, and I love it. And I think I'm gonna change my phone to ring with the cash register ring, because I love that. And I think what's actually super interesting is that there are ways I'll give everybody a pro tip here. So I wrote a book with Phil Jones and Chris Smith called Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. That book now has sold 250,000 copies, which is mind blowing when Phil shares that data with us, because it had pretty humble beginnings. And so, one thing we talked about in the book is this idea of this framework for prospecting called Opening Fact Question, OFQ. And the basic idea is just a way to structure a outreach to start a conversation. And, I was a part of the largest listing attraction experiment in history. Just a quick sidebar here. In Q4 of last year, we got together with 2,300 agents to participate in a program called 100K in 100 days. We developed the plan, some strategies, some marketing strategies, some sales strategies. We helped those agents generate over $7.5 billion in closed listings in 100 days, literally within 100 days. And that was Q4 of 2023, which many would regard as probably the very bottom of, when we look back now, probably the very bottom of the housing market in terms of just the number of transactions. It was an awful quarter, and we absolutely lit the cash register up. And we did that by focusing on using very specific tactics for starting conversations. So one thing I would do if I was listening to this podcast is every time there's news in real estate, this is an opportunity to start a conversation. Glennda, I'm not using the same boring status quo script that everyone else is using. I am becoming the filter for my customers. And so I'll give you a really specific example. If I were to reach out to you today, Glennda, let's say you're in my database, you're in my SOI, I wanted to check in with you. I would say, hey, Glennda, I've been talking to a lot of my clients recently about the market. Since the Fed cut rates, we're seeing a pretty big uptick in activity. Out of curiosity, how has the recent drop in mortgage rates impacted your real estate plans this fall? That's it. And listen, I know a couple dorks who are going to listen to this podcast go, Jimmy, the Fed doesn't impact mortgage rates. They affect the Fed fund rate, which affects the 10-year treasury. I get all of that. But you know what the consumer sees every day? They see the fact that the Fed cuts rates and all of a sudden mortgage rates are going down. So they interpret it like, I understand the technicality here, okay, but we ain't gonna get bonus points by explaining how the Fed fund rate's tied to the Treasury. Like, let's just address the audience here. But it's like, hey, out of curiosity, how has the recent drop to mortgage rates impacted your real estate plans this fall? And this is not a yes or no question. This is a conversation starter. And that's the beauty of a script like this. So when I'm thinking about the news that's happening in real estate, I think of myself as this filter. I'm consuming news from every publication out there, CNBC. I'm following people on X. I'm using Perplexity AI. I'm using all these tools. And I see something that's interesting. I'm saying, you know what? That's probably worth talking to some people about. Like I saw recently, Glennda, the number, this is Redfin put this data out. The number of mortgage lock-ins is up 68% month over month from August to September. Why does that matter? It matters because the mortgage lock-ins is a forward-looking indicator of transactions, meaning that like if that number is dropping, then transactions is going to drop. If that number is rising, then transactions are going to rise. So I'm always using, like, if I'm a real estate agent listening to this podcast, I'm saying, I got to prioritize revenue, like Glennda and I've been talking about. I got to really kind of condition myself to be excited to be talking to people. And the way to solve that problem is get really good at starting conversations. Well, the way to get really good at starting conversations is to study what's happening in the market and use that as a means to say, yeah, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. And what we learned from that program I mentioned, 100K in 100 days, is that 11 real estate conversations equals 1 listing. So if you talk to have 11 serious conversations about selling your house, right? One of those are going to transact. So instead of taking this really big thing, like let's say, Glennda, people who are watching this podcast have a goal of getting $250,000 in GCI in 2025. Right? Which is a fantastic living. Let's say you want to get that number. Okay, well, maybe that's 35 transactions. Okay, that feels intimidating if you've done 3, right? Like last year. Okay, well, 35, that's kind of about 3 per month. Let's give ourselves a little bit of room there. Okay, 3 per month. Well, that means I got to be talking to 30 plus people per month, which means I got to be really probably talking about 1 to 2 unique people per day. Now, all of a sudden, that really difficult big number that's scary, 30 plus transactions, becomes, only a handful of conversations per day. And the reality is that if we look back at our calendars, so few of us are having those conversations. So we got to just design our entire day around that if we want to get to the kind of the end goal we want to get to.
Absolutely. And what's so funny about what you're saying is, because I've been selling real estate since Jesus was a baby. No lie. My first book that I ever read was How to Develop a 6-Figure Income in Real Estate by Mike Ferry. Mm-hmm. The first course I ever took was Sweat Hogs with Floyd Wickman.
Yeah.
And both of those courses back in the 90s, back in the olden days, it had one thing, and that was, you can't leave till you make an appointment. You can't stop calling till you make an appointment. All you need is 1 appointment a day. And in 15 weeks, I did $46 million in listings, literally with just that one rule being brand new. And I called for sale by owners and expireds. And that's the thing, is like, nothing has changed about real estate. The more people you talk to about real estate, the more houses you sell. There's a direct correlation. The quality of the conversation that you have, the fewer conversations you have to have. Direct correlation. And then on top of that, you take all of the data that you have access to today, you use AI to funnel that data efficiently and then turn it around and spit it out to you. And literally what you did in the 90s in 8 hours can literally be done in 2025 in an hour. I mean, that's the, like you're too young to remember, because my Stars and Stripes, you were 10 years old. You probably don't even remember what a newspaper was. So literally, like, I am cutting out the newspaper, the little scatter ads for sale by owners. Like there was this thing, it was called a camera not attached to your phone. You put this stuff called film in it. You took it to the store and had it developed. Like it was like today, like farming a neighborhood is literally, it is so easy to create a farm today. Somebody ought to take you out behind a building if you're not farming right now and slap you around.
Well, listen, Glennda, first off, you know that I'm a millennial and they call me a geriatric millennial now because I'm the very like beginning of the millennial generation. So I'm the last generation to remember what life was like pre-internet and then having the internet. But you have to remember, I'm also from New Hampshire, which everything happens 10 years later in New Hampshire. So we just got dial-up recently here, so it's one of those situations. But you know, it's what's funny. Like there's the thing about at the time in which we're Glenn and I are having this conversation. It's, you know, we're entering into Q4 of 2024, and there was so much optimism heading into this last quarter for the agents who are paying attention. Because I'll give you some data on this, Glennda. During the sort of like, I would call it the recession, the housing recession. And I want to be really clear about this. I'm not talking about a recession in terms of a housing crash in terms of home values. That didn't happen. You know, there's some pockets of the market where we're seeing some, you know, pullback, but by and large, you know, we're not seeing a huge rise in foreclosures anywhere, unless you're some NFT crypto bro who bought at the peak of the market in Miami condos. Like besides those folks, we ain't really seeing a crash in any market. The housing crash was not a crash of home values. It wasn't a crash that impacted consumers. It was a crash that impacted the number of transactions happening. And so during the kind of housing crash of 2022 to 2023, according to FHFA, not the FHA, FHFA, we saw 1.3 million sellers, would-be sellers, not list their house because interest rates went from 3% to flirting with 8% within a relatively short amount of time. Now, interest rates are kind of dancing around the high fives, low sixes, probably going to be in the mid to high fives by the end of 2024. So what does that mean? Okay, that means that yes, buyer demand is going to pick up. We talked about earlier, 68% increase in mortgage lock-ins. We saw a 10% increase last week in the number of mortgage applications to purchase a property. That's all great. Now, here's the mistake everyone's making. Everyone thinks that if interest rates come down, it's going to be champagne and cocaine like in 2021. I mean, that's like what, you know, we're going to see, you know, this huge rush of buyers enter the market. It's going to be multiple offers, waiving all contingencies, no inspections. Like let's turn the jukebox back on. Unfortunately, I think fortunately, that's actually not going to happen in my opinion. Here's my prediction. My prediction is that interest rates will come down to the point where all of those would-be sellers who have been locked in and being held hostage by their interest rate. I mean, the only thing they liked about their home was their interest rate. All of those 1.3 million sellers, probably closer to 2 million now, are now going to think about getting back into the market. I was talking to David Childers, our mutual friend over at Keeping Current Matters. And he goes, Jimmy, at would-be sellers, only 5% of them would consider selling with interest rates in the sixes. That number jumps to 35% when interest rates get into the fives. So translation, we're going to see you're 7x more likely to sell when interest rates are in the fives, because it's a lot more palatable to go from a 3.5% to a 5.5%. And so what I think is going to happen and why agents should be excited and optimistic is that right now, I think we're going to see not only an increase in the inventory, which will likely increase days on market, we will also see a healthy increase in the demand. But I think the inventory will outpace demand, which is okay. That is completely fine for good agents who can list a property and doesn't sell in a week, but takes maybe 3 months, 4 months. Those agents will win. And I think we in real estate should be excited about affordability becoming better. I think affordability for the first time in 4 years improved by 4%. Okay. First time in 4 years, it improved by 4%. People aren't buying they're not buying at the purchase price, they're buying a monthly payment. I mean, we should be excited about a stable market. We should get excited about this idea of homes becoming more affordable, because ultimately that is what allows us in real estate to not have so much unpredictability in our business. And I think that's what all of us have been experiencing over the last few years here.
I think that you are exactly right. I was on a podcast last week and with my rich BFF. She is someone who gives finance, Vivian too. She gives finance information online. And she asked me, she goes, what do you think will happen when interest rates come down? And I said, it will unlock the door of all of the houses that have stayed off of the market because the seller couldn't bear to part with that 3% interest rate. And you're exactly right. They will be much more willing to move when it is in the 5s than when it is in the 6s. And it makes such a huge difference because mentally they're doubling when they go to the 6s, whereas when they're in the 5s, well, it's a little bit higher, but not double. And so I see that all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. And I think that you are exactly right. And I think that you're right also that we will not see this, this multiple offer situation. I think that we will get enough inventory unlocked and on the market that we will be able to satisfy the demand that we have. And I think it's going to be great. And again, I think that it is going to be a great opportunity for the best real estate agents, and we haven't talked about the new National Association of Realtor policies or anything like that. But what I think people don't understand is that these new policies really give the best agents this free agency almost to demand their value. And I think that that's one thing that people aren't looking at. They're thinking, oh, that commissions are going to come down. There's this commission compression. There is commission compression for the hacks and the has-beens. But for the people that are the sharpshooters, the people that are absolutely the best in their community, the best in the business, I think personally myself, that our value escalates.
Yeah, I think I love that, Glennda, and I think right now agents have to realize that complaining is not a strategy. And like, I mean, I have the whole the whole unfolding of the commission. First off, if you ever, as a good agent, if you ever want to be really frustrated, just look at the Facebook groups in terms of these agents who are trying to navigate and circumvent like the commission lawsuits. As again the challenge we have in real estate, the ones who want to do it well. Our job is to communicate our value and demonstrate our value as often as we can through as many channels as we can. And I think right now, to your point, let's take a scenario, Glennda. If I was a buyer's agent, let's say I wasn't a listing agent, even though most of what I teach is about how to get more listings. But if I was a buyer's agent who was just looking to, let's say, command a premium for my services. Because in any market, in any product, any service, there are people who will do it at a discount, and there are people who will pay it at a premium. It's like when you buy a bottle of Fiji water from the gas station, you're paying $2. When you get it from a hotel room, you're paying $12. Okay, I mean the situation is that like there always will be a low end and a high end of a market. So let's say as a buyer's agent, I am limited by the number of transactions I can do because I'm a solo buyer's agent and I only can work with maybe 20 or 30 customers and service them at the level that I consider to be sort of my standard. Well, the thing that I would get really good at, because buyer's agent, let's be clear, they got tough. I mean, listing agents, I think listing agents are kind of, this may be the golden era of being a listing agent as we go into 2025. I mean, I'm telling you right now, like I got a lot of my buddies, a lot of my friends reaching out to me, say, Jimmy, I'm generating more revenue off my listings than ever before. So like, I think listing agents right now are doing just fine. But buyer's agents, let's say you're still a buyer's agent and you want to maintain to be a buyer's agent. What I would focus on and what I get really good at, and people are going to be upset, I'm going to say this, Glennda, because I know there's a lot of people who fall in different camps here, but I would become the king of sourcing off-market deals. And I mean, this would be like I wouldn't talk about my negotiation skills. I wouldn't talk about my customer service. I would like all I'm going to do is find deals that don't exist right now. And I'm going to build a portfolio of off-market deals. And so I might reach out to, prospective sellers and say, like, listen, I've got a lot of buyers I'm working with right now. And the question I ask, and you and I both love Jimmy Burgess. Jimmy Burgess, I went to a conference in New Orleans. It was the Berkshire Hathaway conference. And I got to tell you, if you ever been to a conference with Jimmy Burgess and it's a Berkshire Hathaway conference, it's like walking in and seeing like a celebrity. I mean, they love that dude there. And so it was very weird for me to be the second most liked and popular Jimmy at a conference. But we had a great time. And one of the things Jimmy gave me recently, and a line that he shared with me, and I love this line. Because Jimmy likes to remind everybody he's from the South, as if you can't tell. But this line that he used that I love, it's so good, is when he calls around. So he's like, listen, I'm going to circle dial to find some potential off-market listings, or I'm going to circle dial around a sale or a new listing. Doesn't make a difference, mine or somebody else's. I'll call him up and say, hey, listen, this is Jimmy calling with ABC Realty. I know that you're not expecting my call. I've only got a few minutes before my next meeting or my next appointment or my next call. I wanted to check in because I want to see if anyone has given you a call to discuss 492 Main Street selling in your neighborhood. And this is just a really simple script to kind of open up the conversation. Hey, I know you're not expecting my call, which is something that sort of catches them off guard, using a little bit of pattern interrupt. I only got a few minutes before my next appointment. This is having some high status in my conversation. This is a technique by a guy named Jeremy Miner who teaches this. Like, don't be someone who's like begging to talk to them. Have a little bit of pride in what you're doing. And then the question is, has anyone, the reason I'm reaching out is because 492 Main Street just sold. Has anyone given you a call to give the details? And this is like leveraging our buddy Chris Voss's technique, which is ask a no-oriented question. And then here's Jimmy's line that I love. Jimmy goes, okay, after you give him the details, again, you want to provide value. After you give him the details, go, listen, I would be the world's worst realtor if I didn't ask. Would you consider selling your house if you got a great offer? And that last line there, that sort of like setting it up like as a joke, and the delivery obviously matters. Say, listen, I'd be the worst realtor in the world if I didn't ask. Would you consider selling your house if you got a great offer? And the beauty of that is, Glennda, right? Isn't that like so the beauty of that, Glennda, is that just so the audience understands, is that I'm not asking them if they would sell their house. I'm asking them an easy to answer hypothetical question in which the vast majority of people would say, yeah, I mean, how many of you are in your forever home? Maybe a certain percentage, but I mean, the vast majority is like, yeah, listen, I would consider it, right? I would consider it. And then I've got someone in my list as a potential off-market listing. And so as a buyer's agent, I mean, I am making it my mission to source these off-market deals, expireds, FSBOs, circle dialing, and that is the value. Because then here's a pro tip, Glennda. What I would do is I would turn the corner on social media, and I would shoot a video. This is me, hold my phone, right? My two girls. I would shoot a video and I'd say, hey, I just got off the phone with a potential seller, right? Who would consider selling their house if they got a great offer. The thing I love about this neighborhood or this property is XYZ. If you're thinking about making a move and you're not really, and you haven't been able to find anything on Zillow, send me a DM right now or respond to this poll, whatever the CTA is, right? I mean, so what I'm doing there, Glennda, if your audience is tracking, is I'm sourcing off-market deals through boots on the ground, dropping off letters, making phone calls, and then I'm turning to social media and I'm building up those connections. And I like that. To me, if I'm a buyer's agent right now, like that is my entire playbook. And what the beauty of that is, consumers are now seeing me work in public. They're seeing me sweat a little bit. They're seeing me go the extra mile. I'm not just waiting for a house to hit Zillow and I'm sending my client a link. Like that ain't going to cut it in this sort of new world that we're in right now. So I think that would be something I would be thinking about as a buyer's agent. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Glennda, which is like, the worst thing we can do is say sold above ask price in 3 days. No, like show the sweat.
Show the sweat. Hashtag show the sweat. I love it. So it's so funny that you bring up our good friend, our mutual friend, Jimmy Burgess. It was so funny. I told him, I said, hey, I've got somebody who wants to buy a house in Destin. Do you know of anything in, Cottonwood Estates, this particular neighborhood? And he goes, no. He's like, but I can find you something. And I'm like, okay, great. And 3 days later, he calls me. He's like, hey, I've got 3 houses in Cottonwood Estates, and, they're thinking about selling. And no lie, crossed my heart. We went down there, we looked at this house, and Jimmy sold us this house. I mean, it was literally exactly what you said. I said, hey, looking in this neighborhood. And Jimmy was like, there's not anything on the market right now, but I think I can find you something. And I'm like, really? That's so awesome.
So Jimmy told me that story, and he goes, because Jimmy's been sitting behind a desk for a little while now. Okay. So he hasn't been in the field a little bit. So he's telling me, the way he was telling me the story is like, listen, he's like, imagine getting subbed into the game, and on the other side of the court is Michael Jordan. And in this case, you were Michael Jordan. He's like, I got Glennda Baker, who I'm having to, work with, and I got to like shake off all of these skills that I have not been developing. So it was amazing to hear. And listen, I think to your point, like that is, real estate is really complicated, but then it's not. I mean, like we get paid to solve problems one way or the other. And I think that's what's exciting about what you and I are talking about. So as we wrap here, I think that the message I have to everyone who's going to listen to this, whether they listen to the replay or later on, is this idea that like there is no better time to be a great real estate agent than right now. And if you embrace some of the things that Glenn and I have been talking about, this idea of focusing on revenue, getting creative about how you sort of build your portfolio, being smart about marketing, being thoughtful about how you communicate your value, all of these things together, you can be successful in this industry. And that should give you some excitement and some enthusiasm that, hey, this is actually possible. And Glennda, you and I see it every day with the people that we get the chance to interact with, that like, I mean, this is an industry where it's 2 or 3 bad months from being broke, but it's also 2 or 3 good months from building a career. And I mean, it can turn around that quickly.
Absolutely. And Jimmy, it's so funny. When we started this, I said, I'm going to get you out. Exactly. But you know what happens is when I have the opportunity to talk to people that are so rich in advice and conversation, it's like, I can't get enough. It's like, I want to get so much in. And I'm so thankful for your friendship. I'm so thankful for just what you pour into people, what you pour into agents. You are that person who you never, ever are looking for, what am I getting out of it? You're always looking for, what can I give? And I love, love, love hanging out with you. And I'm so honored that you took your time to spend it with me and my audience today.
Thank you, Glennda. Very kind of you.
Now, Jimmy, where can they find you if they're looking for you like a hound dog?
Listen, I'm not as popular on social media as you are, Glennda, because ain't nobody as popular as Glennda on social media. But the best place to stay connected to me is definitely on Instagram. It's just at Jimmy Mackin on Instagram. I give advice on marketing, sales, and business strategy. As you said, giving a lot of information away for free. Of course, I'm a capitalist. I want to make a lot of money. I want to build some great businesses. And the way you do that, if you want to be a really good capitalist, is you give a lot of good information away for free. So they follow me on Instagram. Best place to stay connected. Send me a DM after you have a chance to watch this podcast. And just to give it back to you, Glennda, like I think the thing that's been so rewarding and so exciting for me as an entrepreneur is I've had a chance to work with people like you, have friends like people like you. And you have been someone who I look at and I hold as the gold standard for how to not only build a real estate business but also how to do it in such a way where you are setting an example for the rest of us. And I think that to me really represents what you're doing here and what you've done elsewhere. And I keep telling you, like, this is just the beginning for Glennda Baker. I think right now, the things you're doing right now are just going to keep snowballing for you. And I'm just so thrilled to see the growth, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, on this episode of Glennda's Guru, I had the opportunity to hang out with my friend, Jimmy Mackin. And if you are looking for him, the best place to find him is on Instagram. And as I always say, send me a text, tag me in a post, give me a call. That's what I love the most, because I would love the opportunity to talk real estate with you today. See you later.